Before we jump into anything about cryptocurrencies, we need to understand what cryptocurrency is built upon, and that is blockchain. So yeah, till now, we have heard all types of different definitions of blockchain. People have compared it to n number of things, with a chess game, with a Google Doc sheet, things like that. But I will particularly not use any analogy, but I will use an example that will help you understand what blockchain is. Till now, we have been hearing, yes, blockchain is a decentralized or distributed network of computers. It is a decentralized ledger. Now, before we jump into what decentralized is, let's start by understanding what a ledger is. Now, ledger is any type of a database. This word ledger is usually used mostly in the financial industry and mostly with any corporate's accounting department. In very simple words, if I have to explain you, it is like a database of all the accounts maintained inside a corporation. Using these ledgers, we record transactions, whether there is an addition of money or a subtraction of money. That means whether there is a credit in the accounts or a debit in the accounts. A similar kind of ledger can also be built for an individual. For example, when you open your net banking accounts, in the net banking, you can clearly see when you watch your accounting statement, there is a credit section and there is a debit section. Two columns which are clearly showing whether your money is being added or your money is being deducted. Ledger is something which is maintained for any kind of financial activity, whether it is for a corporate, individual, institution, like anything. After the whole revolution of cryptocurrencies, this ledger started to be categorized into three categories. The first one was centralized, second one was decentralized, and third one was distributed. Now the question came, like, how are we categorizing this thing? On what basis? One thing that was very fundamental into financial reporting was who has the power to record, to validate these transactions? Who has the power of governance and of control, of authority? On this basis, we started to categorize ledgers into three main categories. The first one was centralized ledger, where in this system there is that one central authority or one central node. Please, I will use this word node very repeatedly. The reason being, node is that one or multiple entity that will be recording, validating transactions. So please remember this word node throughout our course. In centralized body, we have this one node. So this node has the complete control and authority on what data is being updated in these ledgers. And of course, it will become like a backbone, like a spine of not just an organization, but the whole financial system. These days, we have banks who are this backbone, or which is holding, maintaining, controlling everything, how the financial ecosystem or the financial world. The thing with decentralized ledgers was that we will not give this authority of controlling or validating these transactions to a single entity or a single authority. We will distribute these authority into multiple nodes. In the decentralized ledger system, there are multiple nodes who control this whole system of validation or whole system of updating the ledgers. Now there is this third type of ledger system, which is called as distributed ledger. What happens in distributed ledger is that everybody can do transactions and everybody is also a node. That means everybody has the power to participate in the validating and in the updating of ledgers. It will also not be incorrect to say that distributed ledgers are a type of decentralized ledgers, but the power of becoming a node is distributed to every participant of that network. But we need to make sure and we need to understand that both of these ledgers are different. Often they are very mistakenly used in the place of each other. But we need to understand there is a very fundamental difference between decentralized and distributed ledgers. I will explain you this whole ledger system with an example. And with this example, you will also be able to understand how blockchain works. Let's say there are two villages, and in two villages there are 50 people and one sarpanch or one head of the village. Now, let's say if somebody from that village, there are two people in that village, let's say Alex and Bob. Okay. And Alex wants to do a transaction. And let's start with one more assumption, that everybody in the village is owning, let's say 10 acres of land. Now let's say Alex wants to sell 1 acre of land to Bob. They both have agreed to a transaction. Bob wants to buy 1 acre and pay Alex some money. Alex wants to sell 1 acre and receive that amount of money. Okay. Now in the first village, what they're doing, they are going to, let's say, this head of the village, the Sarpanch. The Sarpanch has a clerk with him. He's maintaining like paper register where he's recording all the buying and selling and transactions of land which is happening amongst his villagers. Alex and Bob go to this head of the village and the clerk. They tell the head of the village and the clerk that they want to conduct this transaction. Now for that, they have to get the agreement of head of the village. Once the head of the village gives that agreement, he orders his clerk to facilitate this transaction. And then Alex is now having, let's say, 9 acres of land. Bob is now having 11 acres of land. But there is this one register where all the transaction database is maintained. If anything is happening to that register, there is no proof who is owning or how many acres of land. So one very big problem with this system is that there is a single point of failure. And then there is another village. That village also has 50 people. There are two people in that village, Alex and Bob. Alex decides to sell 1 acre of land to Bob. Everybody in this village is having, let's say, a paper. Okay, and in that paper, there is a whole record of transaction, or there's a whole record of how many people in the village is owning what amount of land. To start with, that is the first paper that was published by the villagers. In that paper, everybody, that means all 50 people in the village, were having 10 acres of land, right? Now Alex wants to conduct this transaction where he wants to sell 1 acre of land to Bob and Bob wants to buy it. Now what they do in this transaction is they hold a panchayat. They call everybody under a peepal tree. Now what they do is they announce in front of everybody, that means all the villagers, that they want to conduct this transaction. Now Alex announces that I want to sell my 1 acre of land to Bob. Bob also agrees to that announcement and says that yes, I want to buy that 1 acre of land. They have constructed a system where they will take votes from all the people in the village. Now let's say there are 50 people. 2 people have already agreed to the transaction. If more than 50% agree to this transaction, the transaction will happen. They take votes from everybody. If 26 vote in favor of this transaction will happen. Now they publish a new page where Alex is now having 9 acres of land, Bob is now having 11 acres of land, and rest other 48 villagers are now having 10 acres of land. They will publish this new page and distribute it to everybody in the village again. Now this way, every villager is having the most updated page or the most updated state of ownership of the land in the village. First thing. Second thing, they are also having the previous one. Now let's say if 10 transactions happen between these villagers, there will be 10 new pages published, and everybody in the village will be having all the 10 pages where they can completely track or trace the whole trail of transactions that has happened in the past. This is the core difference between the centralized system and the decentralized system. The centralized way of recording transactions, which we have been doing till now, and the blockchain-based transaction. Every transaction in the blockchain can be traced back to its source. There's a whole trail of transactions of a particular wallet or a particular account. How? We will learn in a few minutes. But you clearly understood now what is the basic difference. There is no single point of failure in the system which second village has generated. Why? Because everybody in the village is a validator, is that clerk. There is no need of a head of a village. The people between themselves are deciding the passing of a transaction or the conductance of a transaction in a whole democratic process. This is blockchain.